All right, so pretty much a couple things we'll go through. The handout you have here is also on the website, and I think it has some live links here or there, but really does walk through what things look like. Right, you'll see how it goes until 2020, which is kind of wild, but just kind of keep in mind it's a really long process. Our office is here to help you through the entire thing. How many of you are seniors? Juniors? All right, so anybody younger? No? Juniors, seniors, okay. Sometimes we have like a first, second year that's ambitious and wants to learn about the process. It feels super overwhelming, but I probably would have done it. I'm not the biggest planner, but I would have done it. So those of you who are seniors, just know, you might already know this, you have access to career education, to Handshake, to making appointments after you graduate and for life. So just kind of know that, it's not once you graduate, you have to disappear. So as you start getting those invitations for interviews and you want to practice, schedule an appointment, you can do it electronically. You don't have to come back to campus if you're somewhere else in the country or the world. Just to know that. So we can continue working over the time that you're here. So the calendar that we have, some of the dates will wiggle a little bit based on specific program or specific type of program that you're looking at, but medical and dental schools are more or less going to map onto each other across the entire thing, so don't stress about that. Right, so we'll kind of just walk through it, but really as you have questions, raise your hand, let me know, we can stop, go through a couple of things, whatever it might be. Really, so you'll kind of see where we're at. We're already about to be in December on that 2018 thing. Really, so coming to this meeting, good job, or good job to those of you who are listening or watching in the future. I hope the future is nice. And then you'll kind of, from there, you really start thinking about looking at our website and sort of reading through some of the processes a little bit more, figure out where are the questions that you might have. And the other big thing that you'll want to start doing is if you're going through the impact process, which I think everybody here will be going through, you'll really see the 2019-2020 request for an impact advisor that's due January 22nd. It's now live online, right? So it's available online. I would take a look at that sooner rather than later. You don't have to run out and start filling it out tonight, but sometime next week or two, I'd take a peek at it. You'll kind of get a feel for how much info we're collecting there or asking you to fill in. My other suggestion on that front is start on that sooner rather than later. Don't wait until the 20th or the 21st of January and then start filling it in. You'll get really angry at us because you're like, why are you asking for so much? And remind yourself that you waited until the 20th or 21st to actually fill it in. Or, goodness forbid, like the morning of the 22nd. It's just a lot of information. It's going to push you to really reflect on all of your experiences, write a lot of information down. You should definitely keep a copy of that, of course. That's going to be helpful for all of your application materials you're filling in, and we'll pull it up in a second if that's helpful. It's also to make sure your impact advisor, who could be somebody that you're meeting for the first time, it's entirely possible, it happens. So it gives them a good overview of all the things that you've gone through. It makes that sort of everything move a little bit faster, and then you don't have to explain everything. And then hopefully, again, it's going to mirror a lot of the information you're putting in to your application itself, so kind of keep that in mind. So that's due in January. You'll see that we'll have a second application meeting sometime in February, keeping in mind that sadly, as I think we've reminded everybody, Dr. White's retiring in January, so she's unfortunately no longer going to be on campus with us. We are in the process of searching for another advisor right now. We had some candidates on campus not too long ago, so hopefully we'll have somebody in by January. But don't worry, the process will still go on. There will be those of us here to help move it along. So don't let that be an extra stressor in there. We'll make sure things get done. Unfortunately, just we don't have here to help you anymore. It's okay. New people aren't bad things and aren't bad people. It's just new and different. We'll all make it through it alive, I promise. Right, so then you kind of look at some other things in February, right? You want to schedule that first meeting with an impact advisor, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Then we'll have like a personal statement workshop going on, and it'll kind of map sort of how we think you should be working on things as we go over time, right? We'll have interviews starting in March. There'll be a whole process on how you schedule that interview, what that looks like. Then we'll have another final application meeting in April. Again, you'll see in the italicized side of things that'll be going on. It says impact only because these are roughly some things that I might recommend for non-students that aren't going through the impact process, but might have similar deadlines. Right, thinking about letters of recommendation. Right, they'll actually need to finalize your school list, working applications in May, so you kind of walk your way through and you'll see how it goes through January of 2020, which is kind of crazy, kind of scary. But don't worry, like I said, we'll be with you through the entire thing. So questions right off the top of your heads on timeline stuff. Anything jump out at you that you have a question about or concern? Good so far? Okay. All right, so where can you find all this stuff? Definitely, you can go through the website, and you might have been watching me navigate there. You can also go through Handshake. It'll get you to the same place. So you can enter through either door, and I would say what you're really looking at is the applying section. A couple of the things about applying overall, if at any point in the process you decide that you're going to wait a year or two, you just, for whatever reason, you're not ready, you don't want to continue going through it, just let us know. The sooner you make that decision, the easier it can be in general, but whenever it happens, if that's the case, we're not going to force you, nor can we force you to apply. Or if you just want to have that conversation about, like, I'm not sure if I want to do this now, again, there's a are you ready to apply section, which you can definitely read through. We can certainly have some conversations to figure out, like, what are the concerns, how we can sort of help you come to that decision. Your mentor in our office can help you come to that decision. It's ultimately your decision, but we can sort of be sounding boards and sort of talk through problems, questions, concerns. So don't hesitate to let us know if I'm thinking that I might want to wait a little bit to apply, or I know I have waited to apply a little bit. It's okay. We're not going to be mad at you. Just let us know when you do that. Don't go sort of silent and dark, and just let us know by ignoring all communication. That we're a little upset about. That's not nice. Otherwise, just let us know what's going on, and we'll help you figure out whatever the plan is going forward. Whether it's you want to apply a couple of years, or you want to change direction entirely, whatever it is, just let us know. Keep us in the loop. Communicate with us. We'll help you go forward from there. So, thinking about an MPAC advisor. So, I think there's a little more information. I won't necessarily walk through the steps of the MPAC process, but part of it is to get to a committee letter, which collects your letters of recommendation that you're going to collect from individuals and puts them into one giant letter that talks about how amazing and great you are and how you can be a good fit for an institution. We don't make things up. We pull information from there, from the conversations that your advisor has, and from all the information we collect. So just know that your giving us that information is important because it helps go into that. What does your MPAC advisor do for you? So things that they'll do, you'll be assigned one. Like I said, it might be somebody that you've worked with before, that you're faculty member that you know in some way, shape, or form, but it might be somebody entirely new. That's really just dependent on, again, who the faculty are for this coming cycle, and then who gets set with them, and how many students overall we have applying, and how many alumni have applying. So there's no way for you to request a specific advisor. It'll be okay, I promise. If it's somebody new, they're going to support you. Career education will be able to support you. All the other people, wonderful people in your life, will be able to support you through various parts of it. So they'll get that information sheet that I'll pull up in a second to get some to learn about you a little bit, get some information. You'll have an interview with them and another MPAC advisor, and you'll get some feedback on interviews. So I'll give you some places to work on things. It'll kind of help you get some practice in. You can also practice as many times as you need with career education. Just go on and make an appointment and say you want to have a practice interview. You can do that really early if you want, to sort of get things going, and definitely you might want to do that as you start getting interviews scheduled in the future. Even if it's last minute, you can always reach out and see if somebody can accommodate. Summers tend to be a little bit lighter, so it might be possible. But again, just somebody, we can figure things out if we can. So kind of just know that you can continue to meet with us over time. And just like anybody on campus can schedule an interview. Your MPAC advisor, you'll also have a meeting with them, sort of as like a, hi, nice to meet you, or nice to see you again. And kind of, you can have a nice conversation, get to know them. They can get to know you a little bit more. They will review your personal statement at least once. You can also come, again, through our office to have when the advisors review it. Anybody on campus can do that for any sort of personal statement. So your MPAC advisor will do that once. They might do it a couple of times. It's up to them after the first time. From our office, you can make an appointment to come in and meet with myself or one of the other advisors if you've been working with a different career community advisor or with your mentor to work on your personal statement more than once. And that's something that's open to every student on campus. Just know that you're not limited to just working with your MPAC advisor. Make sense? Questions about MPAC advisor and things like that? There'll be timelines and ways to work on scheduling the interviews. You'll work on scheduling your individual appointments with meetings with your advisors directly. So there'll be a process behind that. Make sure you read the instructions, follow the deadlines and the timelines. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to schedule and coordinate all of those things. So do your best to look at your schedules, block off the time when you make a commitment for something. We understand emergencies and last minute things happen, but do your best to try to keep a time that you eventually agree upon and works out. It just makes everybody's life easier. It makes your life easier that you don't have to then try to further bend schedules last minute and week. So I think that's something that's actually pretty important. Where is the... For applicants in this cycle, again, it walks you through all kinds of stuff. So I'd say the other thing is you absolutely don't, you're not required to get an impact committee letter. So if for some reason you don't want to, that's totally up to you. It's your application process. There are some professions, again, nobody in this room, but there, a lot of graduate professional schools don't want a committee letter. They have no idea what to do with it. Doesn't mean you can't come through career education to get some assistance. Doesn't mean you can't work with the director of health professions advising or myself to work on things. Just know that it's a very specific process, especially for dental medical school now. Veterinary schools have really gone away. Have they gone away from 100% now? Right?
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're almost 100% away from committee letters. So just know that it's a very specific thing that you want to keep in mind. So this again walks through a lot of the stuff that we really walked through. So you can definitely pull this up on the website. It'll show you. It'll try to direct you towards any number of things that you should keep in mind, information that you should keep apprised of, deadlines, and try to put them in red to make them really clear. So it'll really walk you through a lot of information. Again, sooner rather than later with a lot of this stuff, at least a cursory overview to sort of figure out where are the points that you want to focus on is going to be to your benefit. If you wait till just the last minute to do this, then it's going to be, it's just going to make it a lot more challenging on you and everybody else. And you don't want to do that to yourself. It's already a long enough, stressful enough process. You'll see that there are lists of all the other application services that we can come up with, and it really does walk you through a ton of information that's going to be really important. All right, so this is the form that the thing that you're going to eventually fill out. You'll definitely want to read through it. Right, I'm not going to fill out the entire thing because it'll take forever, but you'll see that there are 4 pages. It's going to ask us a lot of questions. It's really the things you'll want to think about, the hard parts, are going to be thinking about what are your clinical experiences you've had to date, any research experiences you've had to date, any service, volunteer experiences, work experiences. Right, it's thinking about why do you want to be a physician, is asking information about you and your family, as much as that sort of thing as you want to share. Really, it's about giving us enough information to help craft that a really strong letter for you, and then especially thinking through your experiences, it's to force you to get them all down in one spot. So that's why it's really important to look at the copy of that as well. And that's also why it's important to do it ahead of time and kind of go through things. I don't necessarily want to mess up Megan's process here, put a fake one in there, but you want to go through it and take a look at things. Also, it would be really boring if you suddenly start to fill in a bunch of random fake information. And that's not exciting viewing for anybody, even me. So definitely take a look through all of that. So I think that the things that are really important, sort of like, what do I do now based on, I'm sitting here, I might be done with midterms, I might be stressing about the next one I have coming up in a couple of days, I have finals down the road, I've got to go home, maybe I get to go home, your mileage may vary on that one. So a big part is, again, really deciding on, do you feel like you're ready to apply? Right, there's certainly some clear things like, how am I doing my prerequisites? Do I have my standardized test planned? You really should have that set up by now in terms of knowing when your date's going to be, and then make sure that you sign up for that if you haven't already, because you don't want all the seats to fill for somebody, because that'll cause a wrinkle sort of in your plans. And just decide, do you feel like you're ready to jump into this process? And I think it's really important to also parse the difference between am I ready and am I really nervous and edgy because this is a seriously intimidating process. It's okay to feel that way. It is 100% okay. It is a big commitment. It's a long process. It's very challenging. It's okay to be nervous, to be a little scared, like, how is this going to go? I don't know if it's going to go well. That's all okay, and don't let that stop you from applying. If it's more like, I'm not ready to get in, like if I get in, I'm going to be freaked out because I'm not ready to start medical school. There's something else I want to do between now and then, or I just don't think I can build a strong application yet. Those are the things that we want to have a conversation about and figure out, maybe it's just the way you're thinking about it and you're absolutely ready to go, or you just decided that you, yourself, the person, has decided, I'm not ready to jump into this yet, I'm going to wait another year, then okay, let's make that. But don't let sort of the general anxiety and fear of this process keep you from jumping in. You're all going to be really well prepared in all kinds of different ways and have things to offer, so just kind of remind yourselves of that. But don't let that general anxiety keep you from jumping in. We can help you work through it. We can sort of make a plan for all of that. But either way, if you decide not to apply, that's okay. Like I said, we can make a plan for, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on as the next step? Focus on work, on whatever the case is. We can sort of help figure that out as well. We can also do both of them at the same time. That's okay as well. So definitely want to keep in touch with health professions advising, with career education, and just kind of keep in touch. Make sure you're paying attention to newsletters, coming to the sessions that we're doing over the next couple of months to sort of see where we're at in the process. Consulting with timeline, right? And see kind of where am I on these things, so I feel like I'm making the progress that I should be. I think are going to be really important things. And if, again, anything ever seems confusing, concerning, you're unsure about it, then you can definitely check in with us. As you can tell from the camera back there, we're recording this one, we recorded the last couple of ones, so we try to keep recordings up there. So you don't have to feel like you have to memorize everything we say, you can go back to it. We also have, well, that's not the website, that's something else now, right? We also have the website, which lays everything out. It has a timeline on there, so all of that information can be really helpful as well. So don't hesitate to watch parts of the videos again if you feel like you need to. Again, to reach out, keep in touch with us and let us be a resource for you. That's what we're here for. Right, look at the various portions of the applying piece, right? Again, sort of kind of make your way through there, figure out which pieces up here you want to know more about, or the most stressful, the most interesting, whatever the case is, but kind of systematically make your way through there. We try to put really everything we can that we tell you one of these is going to be in there. It's probably going to be clearer and easier to understand, and Dr. White's wonderful writing versus my rambling in front of you right now, but it's all there. So it's a resource for you. And if anytime anything's confusing in here, or you're unsure about something, let us know. Maybe some formatting's a little bit weird, or we could be clearer somehow. That's okay, as long as you're nice about it. I was a little confused about this part. Does this mean this or that? We can take a look at it and see, can we make it clearer? So kind of just let us know as you go through things. But there's a lot of links to click on, but we also tried to, try to break it up a little bit so you can make it through piece by piece. So kind of keeping that in mind. So definitely take a look at it. Right, and so we have medical and dental school in the room. So really look at your individual processes, right? There are going to be some differences, definitely. I mean, they're completely different places to apply, right? Different professions. So just make sure that you look at the specifics for your profession. That when the application, they call them application workbooks. What's it called?
Yeah, the guidebooks and information books.
Yeah, so once those are there, take a look at those. They can be really helpful. The applications are, again, they're long and convoluted. They take a while. So when those are available, take a look at them. Sit down with your MPEC advisor. Sit down with somebody if it's helpful, and kind of look through those and sort of help make sense of them. But if you do a little bit of that work ahead of time, it makes your life a little bit easier. That way you can sort of get a feel for, do you have questions about your application process at all? And you can ask those as they come up. And the earlier you start to take a look at those things and see what's kind of stressing you out, what's confusing, what's unclear, then we can help you figure that out and feel more confident in making that step. Definitely look at scheduling and figuring out if you still need to take your exam, so your MCAT or your DAT. Make sure you get that scheduled and figure out your plan for studying between now and then, if you still need to do that. It's just going to be really important to get it on the calendar, and then you also can't run away from it. It's no fun. It's a lot of tests. It's a long test, but you really want to prepare for it as best as you can. So put that on the calendar. Really, the latest is May that you'll want to absolutely take it, right? Any later than that, and then it can start pushing back when you could submit your application. So that's why you'll see that's a recommendation. Again, it's your application process. If you decide to take it later, just know that it'll push things back a little bit just on the processing side. And you want to get your application in there as soon as you can. Other things you'll be doing is, kind of slowly start working through, right? You'll see the finalizing school list as one of the lists, as one of the things on here. So really, again, slowly over time, start looking at different schools. Ways to think about it, right? Definitely applying to your state school. That should just be a thing you should do. Higher chance usually of getting in, better cost usually. So there's some definite benefits there. So keep that in mind. And then thinking about, ways to think about it are, there are a couple of different approaches. I would say one, to figure out how many can you afford to apply to. If you're not getting a fee waiver, then there's the fee assistance program. Then you are paying for all the applications. So really figuring out what is a budget for how many you can realistically apply to is going to be really important to help give you a frame of okay, how many am I working with? Because finances can be a limitation. Other things to think about. You can look at the medical school. I forget Athens. The one where it shows all the info.
Oh, yeah.
You're not retired yet, Dr. White?
The MSAR, Medical School Admissions Requirements.
There you go. So the MSAR, so you can find that through AAMC's website, and so it lays out a lot of basic information about the schools. It shows averages and ranges for scores and things. It gives you a lot of information to help figure out sort of some of that list of when you have scores and numbers, because those are a portion of the application process. It sort of helps figure some of that out. I know there's a cost for it. It's not astronomical. It also can't hurt to, if you want to sort of figure out the cost of somebody else and look on with them, or if you've got a buddy in that sort of way. But you're still going to have you're going to have to have an account with AAMC in general for all the work that you're doing, or with, I forget the dental one. ADSAS. There we go. So you're going to have your account with that as one of those. either way, but I would say that those could be really helpful in sort of helping to wrap your head around school lessons, starting to slowly get to that point. I would say something else that's easy to do now that will be really helpful in the long term is really start thinking about your personal statement, right? I would say this early, it sounds kind of crazy, like what is this dude talking about? He's telling me to start thinking about a personal statement. It's not even December yet. What does that really mean? Does that mean you just sit down and like write out, you know, an entire draft of something? No. If that's what you work, then go for it. But I would say like just start thinking about like how am I going to answer the question? Why do I want to be a doctor? Why do I want to be a dentist? Like just start there. Like just dump the ideas out of your brain. Like what comes out about why you want to go into this profession, whatever that might mean. And put something down and come back to that document, you know, in a couple of weeks again and see like what else have I thought about. Once you sort of get it going in there, then you'll kind of can start putting some ideas down, like what things come up. What experiences have I had directly or have I witnessed indirectly that sort of play into these reasons why I want to go through this. And if you just do it bit by bit, you'll start sort of, you know, formulating some ideas. It'll start to make sense. It'll probably drive you crazy because you're going to be like, there's not a full, right? There's not a full statement here yet. What is going on here? But if you start doing that slowly, and you know, again, you can come into career education, you meet with your mentor, meet with one of the career advisors, meet with anybody else on campus that you work with closely, and you can slowly start sort of talking some of those ideas out loud a little bit and starting to sort of build them into that personal statement that's personal to you. If you start really early and you do it bit by bit and get through those ideas, it's going to make it easier when you have to sit down really and write that full draft. You can wait till the last minute if you want. It just becomes that much more stressful and harder. So I'd say start just thinking about, you know, that basic question: why do I want to go into this profession? And you kind of just go from there. And carve out a little bit of time every week or couple of weeks, 20, 30 minutes at least, something like that, just to like jot whatever new ideas come down, expand on the one that you kind of put down there. As you're going through that, you know, that long document where you're getting information to us for your impact process, right? That'll probably jog free some ideas, some experiences. So as you're doing that, add to that sort of like personal statement brainstorm thing you have going on. And at some point, talk it out with somebody that you sort of trust to sort of have that type of conversation. It can be really personal, but talk it out with somebody. It can be really helpful. Other thing to start thinking about is, right, just thinking about your letter's recommendation, right? Just kind of thinking about who are the people that I might want to have write letters of recommendation for me. And you'll kind of see what it looks like if you look through the requirements about the number and type of letters that we're looking for. But really just start thinking about who are people that might write letters of recommendation for me for medical or dental school or whichever other program I'm going through, right? You'll see some requirements from science faculty in terms of what we're looking for, right? Is anybody thinking about applying MD, PhD? Okay, so if you're thinking MD, PhD, anybody out there, anybody in the room that's maybe out there, you want to think about making sure that you contact anybody that you've done any research under. Every one of them should be writing a letter of recommendation for you. So if that's somebody you haven't talked to in a while, if they're a busy PI or they're a busy lab manager or a busy whomever, then reach out a little bit earlier to try and get on their radar about, you know, I'm going to be applying to, you know, medical school or MD, PhD program. You know, kind of just reconnect sometime this semester. It doesn't have to be sort of necessarily the let's sit down and talk about my motivations, but at least reach out to people, especially if they're off campus and you know it can be a bit of a challenge to reach them. Reach out once this semester just to give them an update if it's been a while about how things are going, how's the semester. You know, if they offered to write a letter, you know, because they knew about that when you worked with them or met them, remind them like, you know, remember we worked together, you offered to maybe write a letter of recommendation, planning on applying. I was wondering if that's something you still might be willing to do and if you could connect sometime in the spring about a little more details. Something in that realm, kind of just make those connections, especially for really busy people that you think might be hard to get a hold of. And just kind of start thinking through that list and really think about for yourself. Don't necessarily have to share with anybody, but think about all those lists, whatever your list looks like, sort of how do they know you, how long have they known you, what's the context, how can they talk about your preparedness for medical or dental school or any sort of clinical profession, right, whatever that might look like. And then that can also help when it gets down to, you have to figure out, you know, you've got to cut some people out, then you can sort of figure out who's that going to be, who you're going to limit it to. Does that make sense? Right, and really all this is like, you'll kind of see that we put the timeline in there and we're like really trying to say, think about all these different pieces kind of early, is that you really want to plan on submitting your application as early as you can. There's no benefit to waiting a really, really long time. Over the long haul, it's going to hurt you if you're later and later sort of just in the queue to be reviewed. But the sooner you can get in there, the better. So if you start thinking about things really early, which is why, right, we're in November talking about applying to something in June, which is crazy, and it's okay to feel that way because it is crazy. But if you start thinking about it now, again, it's going to make you're going to be prepared and ready to go there. and really think about your summers too. Again, I know, crazy, right? We're talking about your summer when it's just getting cold outside, but it's just one of those things to have in the back of your brain is for your summer, like kind of what's that going to look like for you? What are some of the things that you might be wanting to do, or if you have something planned already, right? Making sure that you have access to a stable internet connection to be able to submit your application is really, really important. I know it sounds really mundane and like a minute detail, but it's actually a really big one. Right? You don't want to just accidentally put yourself somewhere that you don't have access to hitting submit. You don't have to be scrambling to call somebody up and be like, okay, best friend, like here's my password, and then it's an embarrassing password about like, I don't know what, but it's embarrassing because that's just the way it is, because nobody would have guessed it, but it's embarrassing, and you have to share it. And then they have to submit, and then, it's all of that. You don't want that to happen. So kind of keep that in mind about when you can start, when you can actually submit, and where you're going to be. Is it going to be a way that, you can do that? And you don't want that small, again, you want that small detail to stress you out. And have like a vacation planned or a trip somewhere, a service trip planned somewhere that you can't have access to anything. Instead of enjoying the experience, you're stressed out the entire time about it's now 3 days and I haven't seen it. It's now 4 days. You don't want to do that to yourself. So try to plan accordingly. And then even starting to think about late summer into the fall, when we start getting into application stuff. If you're planning or thinking about doing something where you're traveling internationally or you're placed internationally, again, we'll get to that as we get a little bit later into this entire process. But if that's you, that you think that's on your radar, it's on your list of things you might be doing, let's sit down and talk about sort of what's the plan for getting back for interviews, for filling out secondaries. Again, there are some schools that will send you secondaries right away, like you hit submit and pretty much you'll get something pretty soon saying fill this out, and there are those that will wait a little bit longer, but you want to fill them out pretty quickly. So again, same thing, right? What's your plan for where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing? Will you have access to an internet connection at some point, or will you have a way to get access so you can submit those secondaries? And then thinking further down the line, if you're thinking something international, something remote, whatever that might mean, how you're going to manage interview stuff when you get to that point as well. So those are sort of bits and pieces to keep in the back of your mind as you're thinking about what comes after this academic year at Wellesley, whether or not you're moving on from Wellesley or you still have another year, but you're planning your summer. And then other things, really just, over time start meeting with your different advisors, right? Once you have an AMPEC advisor, you want to meet with them, come into Career Education, meet with myself, whoever the new Director of Health Person Advising will be, meet with your mentor, meet with a different advisor. If you've met with, Francis or Emma or Christina or whoever it is, Christina in our office, whoever it is, meet with them as well. They're not necessarily going to be as well versed in things, but they can sort of help you think through and walk through and talk through. You might just ask some questions because the med school or dental school process is new to them. They might have some questions that sort of jog some things for you or figure out a way to ask a different question or approach a problem from a different way. So there are tons of people on campus that are willing to help you. They're going to have different levels of familiarity with you, with this process, but if you reach out to them, they're going to do their best to help you or direct you towards the person who can. You can reach out to people who are currently in the application process or started medical and dental school. There are all kinds of people you can reach out to sort of find out about different parts of the process and bounce ideas off of things. So, the earlier you kind of start putting the feelers out on that, then the higher likelihood that people will respond and say, sure, let's find some time. If you wait till last minute to try to meet with everybody about everything, it just becomes hard. It's not because people don't like you and they don't want to help you. It's just not everybody can schedule in the last minute meeting to meet your needs. That make sense? Yeah. All right. Talked at you quite a bit. What questions or concerns about starting into this process, whether it's MPAC or your general application to things, something you can point out or help make use of the little bit of time that left with? Concerns, confusions, things I've mumbled through?
I have a fairly individual question, but it's that I'm wondering when rec letters need to be turned in to the powers that be, because if we're graduating and going into a job, are those bosses too late for rec letters, or when do they need to be in?
So you're talking about a job that you're starting in essentially May, June?
June. We don't graduate till May 31st.
So yeah, they're probably not going to. They're going to be a bit too late.
Okay.
And with that short a period of time, they're not going to know you well. They're not going to have a lot to say. And if it's somebody that you've already been working with, then there's no reason to wait to ask them.
Okay, so the rec letters are due with the MCAS.
Yeah. So you're submitting. So you're submitting them. Where's the date here? Oh, we've got the actual thing. So individual, so if you flip this, the back half of that handout, in May, you'll see 5/26/19's individual letters of recommendation are due to us. So that's so that they can be sort of digested, if you will, and processed so we can go through the entire process. So any sort of position that you have going on for coming up after Wellesley is not really going to be included. But that could be an update further down the line about depending on what goes on. So there's the possibility of doing some application updates further down the line. Not likely to result in an actual letter of recommendation, but still something that you can point out and sort of in addition to what we have going on.
Who are usually the impact advisors? Like, do they come from a specific department or from all over campus?
Yeah, they come from all over campus. Okay. So they're faculty from all over. I think the only non-faculty members are the Director of Health Person Advising and myself right now. But otherwise, they're faculty from all number of disciplines.
Okay.
We can have a long conversation about how committees for faculty work if you really want after we're done. There's no reason to talk about it before. But yeah, so they're all over the place. So that's why it might be somebody that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually met a couple of faculty members doing interviews that way. So it's kind of cool.
So I still have to ask for individual letters of recommendation from my professors, even though I have an impact advisor.
Correct.
And when should I ask for these recommendation letters? Because they're due in May. But if I ask, when's a good time to ask?
Yeah, so I'd say probably January, February is when you probably really want to try to sit down with somebody if you feel like you need to give them some time, and then you'll want to provide some reminders. So I'd say this semester, if it's somebody you work with regularly, if it's like a faculty member you still have, or you work in their lab, or you volunteer around them or with them, I'd say it's worth having that, just a basic conversation to put it on their radar. Like, oh, I'm thinking about applying, you think you might be willing to write a letter of recommendation. And if they say yes, and when they do, because you're awesome and they want to write one for you, then you can let them know in the spring, I'll follow up with some more information about how to submit it and things. If it's faculty on this campus, they'll be pretty familiar with it already, but still, you kind of just want to get it on their radar early this semester, just as a basic, like, hey, and then a catch up for people that are off campus, definitely work. And then you'll really want to get into that when the semester starts in the spring. And if you're on campus at the winter session, you can have those conversations. And if it's been a while for somebody too, then that gives you a little bit more time to try to sit down with them, give them the update of what's the latest and your interest in going to medical school or dental school, and it kind of helps give them fill in some of the back information for writing a letter for you.
I have a question about the form. Is it like you just complete it all in one sitting, or can we is it fine to you go to the next page and pause the web?
I would really encourage you to do it over days, because it really, as Christopher said, you really want to think, how are these experiences meaningful to me? I want to include everything, because the advisor is going to use this form to really inform the letter. So you want it to be crisp, concise, well written, not just kind of stream of consciousness. So I would take at least a few days to fill it out. It's shorter this year than it was last year, but it's still a lot of information.
Does it allow you to go and come back with them?
I think it does.
Okay. Yeah.
And actually, the reason why you're having trouble finding it, Christopher, is the form is embedded in the form Christopher is showing you now. So this is the mandatory disclosure, and have you had an honor code violation, and do you want an MPAC advisor? And if he filled in information and was allowed to go ahead, then it would ask you for transcripts, and then the applicant information form would be there as a Word document, which you can download, fill out at your leisure, and then upload again and send it to us.
File. So it's asking for my transcripts, which I'm not going to show you.
So yeah, if you click on that link, you could get to the
So it's
form.
totally a new
There
process.
you go.
Now you're like, oh, how is this dude going to help me? He has no idea what's going on.
No, it's just.
I promise I do. It's just
He knows
keep on
it.
playing with technology. We try to make things easier. So we try to take also.
It's that it's a year ago, so it just takes us a while.
So we try to take your feedback into account as well. So you'll see, right, the things that are going into it. And this is why it's sort of important to really think about it early. Like that's some of the easy parts. Right, and then you start to get into some of the questions, right?
Can we post this on the website so that we don't have to go into the Google form, fill out half of it, and then go back and resubmit it? Wouldn't it be easier if we just have that, the link to that file?
I don't know, it wasn't part of the process.
So it's important that you do all elements of the form, and that's why it's embedded in the whole applicant, requesting an impact advisor form. If we just had this form floating around on its own, then people wouldn't do the other parts
Oh, I see.
that are just as important.
Right, then we start to get the clinical experiences. Again, you'll see that how much text is here and you haven't filled it in yet, right? So clinical experiences, research experiences, community service, other activities, relevant high school experiences, right? You might think have the letters of recommendation for you. Which schools you're planning on applying to. So kind of see how much information, right? You think about like how you start filling this in, it's going to take a little while. So that's why it'd be important to slowly start working on it a little bit over some time rather than wait till the last minute. So that's why we definitely make that recommendation to do that.
Is there like an estimated word count you should have for each one of those sections, or just go for it?
Yeah, I would. It's a really good question. I think we had this conversation and we couldn't figure out like an actual word count that would make sense.
Mhm.
So a couple of things. I think we've seen all these from like 6-7 pages. I think the longest one is like in the 20s maybe. It's insanely long. So I guess a couple things about it. Number one, you want to make it right. Think about what it's being used for, right? It's to really sort of grab as a lot of this information about your experiences as possible, but you also want it to be usable for you. Right, so if you were to, write like 1,000 words on every experience across all this, how long it would be? Like, would that be useful to you, like to actually refer to and to go back to? So I would focus on making it sort of really concise. Don't worry about it being sort of like a flowery narrative, like you're writing short stories, if you will. It's more about sort of really thinking about what's the important information, right? If you look at sort of what it's asking, right? So we're asking basics: title, dates, hours spent. Right, responsibilities, who you work with, right, list leadership and teamwork and participation, right? So it's pretty relatively broad, but please briefly describe any experiences of the personal growth and discovery, right? So kind of keeping that in mind. Some of it's very, this part's really concrete, it's very, there's no reason for that to be super long because it's very basic information. It's stuff you probably already have in your resume or CV. And then it's really thinking about, right, with that idea towards growth and discovery and being prepared to go into dental school, go into medical school, be a dentist, be a physician. So I know that's a wishy-washy answer. There's not a direct one, but kind of just make sure you get the information you need on there, and work. It's sort of like an exercise in being clear and concise as well with getting all the information across. I wish I could give you a word count, but maybe someday we'll evolve to that level and say, here's the optimal word count that we've done. Might be well. Questions or concerns about the form, processes, timelines, components?
What's the average number of schools that mostly students apply to? I know it varies, but.
You know what the answer is?
So this year, the seniors applied to an average of 20, and the alums applied to an average of 26 for medical, and for dental it's usually a little bit lower than that. I would say fewer than 10 gets a little cavalier on the medical side, and more than 30 is expensive and will take you a long time, and secondaries will take you a longer time, and then if you start interviewing, that will be expensive. So usually the sweet spot's somewhere around 20, 25. For dental, maybe somewhere between 6 and 12. That would be pretty typical.
We can have whole conversations with your MPEC advisor, with advisors in the office about thinking about schools, right? Because there are things to consider about location. Those things are, believe it or not, important on some level. So you want to kind of take that into account as well. So there are a number of factors that we can sit down with you and sort of help you work through.
So for the actual application itself, is it kind of like the college application where there's a main form that we send to all the schools, and then certain schools will have extra supplementary essays and that sort of thing that they ask for?
Yeah, so what you'll do is you'll go through the portal for your application, so whichever, either dental or the medical, or if you're applying medical, right, there's both osteopathic and allopathic schools. So depending on which one you're going through, you'll go through that application, you'll submit it, and that'll be really universal for all of those. And then from the schools you apply to, some, maybe most, maybe all, depends on their approach, they will send you the secondaries, and those are sort of like the supplementary ones specific to their institution, and those ones directly. And that's sort of like to the comment of thinking about, right, if you apply to 50 schools or something, then how are you going to manage paying for and filling out all the secondaries? Because you want to have a pretty quick turnaround around all those, and those could be, a couple of extra essays. And they're going to be a little bit different for each school. There are going to definitely be some similarities, but you kind of want to, that's where also thinking about where you're sort of going to be geographically, right? And all of the things over the summer when you start getting those secondaries back. That's more or less how it works. So it's similar-ish in that sense, but it's definitely different. That's why there's a whole book on helping you go through the application process, just to try to make it clear.
So I know the MCAS has the fee assistant program. Are there any other fee assistant programs for the medical school process, or is it just that one?
I don't know if, are there others besides the one that goes directly through A and C or through for the fee assistance programs? I know there's the ones directly through the organizations.
Yeah, so the different organizations do have fee assistance programs, and the one for AMCAS will cover your AMCAS application, and many schools that charge for secondaries, which they all do, will give you either a discount or waive the charge for your secondary application. So it covers a lot.
Okay.
Are you aware of any sort of third-party organizations that cover any of those? I know that's not my
I'm not.
Are there additional forms international students have to fill through this process?
When do they get into the financial disclosure stuff and that sort of things, I haven't actually looked through it on the...
I don't think there's anything, as part of the MCAS application, you state whether you're a citizen of what country and if you have state residency and things like that. But otherwise, I don't think there's anything you do with the primary application. Once the schools receive your application, they may have additional questions for you for financing your education, but not in the first phase.
That's a good question.
So I'm not sure if I missed this part, but will that form be shown to our letter of rec writers? Or
No.
no?
So this form, you'll see it. Your MPEC advisor will see it, and then, well, that's actually primarily who will see it. You and the MPEC advisor, the director of health grants advising, and the coordinators of Megan. They would have access to these. They're not going to sit down and read through all of them, but we're not going to send it to anybody. If for some reason you want to send it to somebody that's writing a letter, that's totally on you. If you want to use portions of it somehow, again, that's where spending that time earlier rather than later to figure out what you use it for. But otherwise, no, we're not sending it anywhere else.
Okay.
It's really for you to focus on going through all of your experiences and growth and competencies and everything, and then for the letter writing process and learning about you as well. And then whatever else you decide to use it for. So if you find it helpful that way, then go for using pieces of it. That's up to you. Any other questions about our process, the application process in general, things further on, confusion, things you've heard scare you or confusing?
So I'm also reading on the letter of rec, the site, and it says, if your letter writer agrees to write a letter on your behalf as part of the MPAC committee letter, please provide him/her with a copy of information for letter writers. Will we be receiving that later in the year?
So that's going to be it will be, located here, right where you're reading it right now.
Oh,
That information is all written up, but because there will be a new director, we didn't want to put my form because the new director might want to say things differently. So there will be a hot link there for you.
Okay.
Yeah, when you get there.
And on the letters of rec still, so if, I know a lot of schools say things like 3 letters, but if we're going through MPAC, is it 3 letters only, or, because your website says up to 5, if it's all in a committee letter, is it okay to send one with more than whatever the school says to those schools?
you to send a committee letter with, are you worried that the committee, they say 3 letters and the committee letter has 5 included?
Yeah.
Is that the concern? It'll be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's all included as like a letter. Like there's all the attachments, but it's a gigundo letter, but it's a letter.
Great.
It's gigundo, it actually says it. If you read the website. No, it doesn't say it. I'm lying, everybody. But it sounds good. It's a good question, though.
So if a school says they want 3 letters, you can just submit the 1 MPAC letter.
Yeah, the committee letter will cover the letter requirements.
Oh, okay.
It sounds kind of crazy, but it'll work.
Wait, so some dental schools require a letter from a dentist, and how is that gonna work then? Would that also, would we have to connect our dentist to our MPAC advisor, or?
So there's a process you'll see, there'll be a process, and again, this is where, apologies for how vague it sounds, to Lynn's point, there will be a new director in place, so kind of some bits and pieces if we decide to change them, like sort of the method of delivery might change a little bit in some way, but what we've done in the past is, when you request a letter, there'll be that, what do we just call it? This information for letter writers thing. Like this will give the information, and so you would give that to the dentist, and it would let them, know how they're going to submit the letter. So it wouldn't go to the dental application; it would come through our office. It would still make it there, right? So if I was the director, it would be like it would sort of make it to me. Your committee letter writer would also see it, and then I would package it up with the committee letter, and then send it to the new school portal. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So it'll just come to us. But that's where once we get the information out there, it'll get there. So feel free to still, again, reach out to those people and have that conversation. But yeah, it'll come to us and it'll make it to the dental school. It'll be okay.
I'm just gonna add that, the committee letters, people sweat the committee letters. Our job is to make you look as good as we possibly can. So when we get your letters of recommendation, you mentioned, do we want a letter from a dentist? We love letters from dentists because when we talk about your clinical experience, we'll take out the absolute best sentence from that letter of recommendation and quote it in our committee letter. So that 2-page committee letter, in a nutshell, describes you as best as we could possibly describe you, with best comments from all of your letter writers, so that it's just this tidy little shiny nugget about you. So you can, the more information you give us in a good, clear way, the better we can make you look. So when you're filling out the form, think about your letter writers, think about who do you want to say great things that we can tell your story in a really lovely way. That's our goal.
As questions and concerns come up through the process, and they will, it's okay. You might feel overwhelmed right now. Again, it's going to happen over this lengthy process. Just know that we're here for you. There are all manner of people across campus that are here for you. Again, really, I would advise reaching out to some alums, whether they're currently students in the type of program interested in, they've graduated, they're in the application process, they're applied the previous cycle, that sort of thing. Those are all different resources where you can gain little bits of information. Just remember, the entire time this is your process. There are certain things, again, that you see how complex it is that we have as requirements just to make sure that we can get a really high quality product in the end to do the best that we can to help you, make this next step in your career, this first step in your careers. So just know that there's a lot of those for reasons to try to do as best as we possibly can, but just know that it's your process, right? So, take ownership of it. Let us know how we can help as we go through the entire thing. Read us as much or as little as you need. Just kind of keep in touch. Let us know where things are going as you go through it. And as questions come up, don't hesitate to email or, I have pop-up hours Tuesday mornings. Feel free to come by for those if you have questions. Feel free to chat with anybody in career education. They're probably going to direct you to one of the two of us or to Megan, but it's okay if that's the contact you make. It's the contact you make. Remember, it's your process. At any point you want to jump out of it, that's up to you. We'll support you in whatever that looks like and what that next step looks like. And if you do that, when you're ready to jump in, we're here to support you. The timeline, again, barring any major changes from the new director, roughly the same time. Just late November is when we'll sort of get about thinking for next cycle. So kind of know that if you decide to jump out this year and you're graduating, just sort of reach back out sometime, in the fall semester, preferably before the end of November. Let us know you're thinking about it. Keep it on the website. Again, it should be up to date all the time as well, and you can always jump back in. You don't have to physically come back also to go through all this as well. So don't stress about having to make it to campus if you are at a distance going forward. But as questions, concerns come up, just keep in touch. Let us know what we can do. Keep an eye on the website. We try to keep everything up to date. Just good luck with everything. It's a long process. Everybody else that's going there goes through it. It'll be worth it in the end. You'll make it. I promise. It'll be good. Cool. All right. Have a good evening.